Father said she is only yours, no one else's? And those words settled in my heart like quiet rain, soft, steady, sinking into the deepest places, planting hope where fear once lived. He looked at me with the wisdom of a man who had seen the world's storms and its clear skies, and in his voice was a calm certainty, a gentle truth wrapped in reassurance. I held his words the way one holds a lantern, while walking through the night, letting the glow guide each hesitant step, letting the warmth soothe the trembling in my soul. For I had loved her with a love that carved me open, a love that made the world look softer, kinder, a love that carried both my strength and my fear inside its trembling wings. There were days I doubted, nights when silence felt heavier than any grief, moments when her distance hurt more than any sharp word ever could. But Father stood there, steady as mountains, his eyes holding the kind of truth that only life's long journey can teach. "She is only yours," he said again, as if repeating it would melt my uncertainty, as if those words were a cure for every wound I had tried to hide. In that moment, the world felt still. Even the wind outside seemed to pause, as though listening to the sacred promise that lingered in the air between us. I felt my chest loosen, like a door unbolted after years of being locked, like a burden allowed to fall from tired, trembling shoulders. I remembered her smile, soft as dawn, bright as hope, a smile that had lived in my heart long before I knew what love meant. I remembered the way she looked at me, sometimes shy, sometimes bold, sometimes as if she, too, was learning how to breathe beside me. Father's words echoed inside me, like a steady heartbeat I could trust, a reminder that some loves are written even before we understand them. He placed a hand on my shoulder, firm, warm, and full of quiet faith. "You are her home," he whispered, "and she will always find her way back to you." And something inside me stirred. A gentle rising, a slow rebuilding, a hope not born of dreams, but of truth given by someone who knew. Maybe love is not always loud, not always fireworks, not always easy. Sometimes it is a steady promise, carried from one generation to the next. Sometimes it is a father's voice, breaking through the fog of fear, lighting the path with simple certainty. "She is only yours." And I let those words settle in me. Let them soften the ache. Let them rebuild the moments that doubt had shattered. For if Father believed it, then perhaps destiny had spoken through him. Perhaps the universe had whispered the same truth into the folds of his experience. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, feeling the tenderness of hope return, feeling my heart stretch open again, to welcome a love I had feared losing. "She is only yours," he said, not as a command, not as a claim, but as a gentle reassurance that fate had already chosen its path. And in that moment, I finally allowed myself to believe it. I kept walking, letting the memories guide me, letting each thought of her become a heartbeat, letting the silence between the trees fill itself with the sound of her name. There are moments in life when you don't choose love. Love chooses you, quietly, gently, like a hand reaching through darkness. She entered my life in that same quiet way, a soft presence, a small smile, a gentle light I didn't know I needed, until it settled into my soul. Father always said that fate speaks softly, that destiny rarely shouts, that the heart hears truths long before the mind understands them. And now I understood why his words felt so sure, why his voice carried the weight of something older than time. "She is only yours," he said, and perhaps he saw something I didn't, something written in the way she looked at me, something hidden in the way my heart moved toward her. I remembered the first time she held my hand, how her fingers trembled slightly, how her touch felt both fragile and fearless, like she was offering me a piece of her soul. I remembered the softness in her voice, when she spoke my name for the first time, how it sounded like a prayer. She didn't realize she was whispering. The garden around me held its breath, as if nature itself understood the weight of the memories drifting through my mind, as if the earth was honoring the love we shared. I paused near the old fountain, where water flowed in gentle circles, repeating patterns without end, a reminder that love, too, returns to where it began. I wondered if she was thinking of me tonight, if somewhere in her quiet world, my name flickered like a small flame, refusing to be extinguished by distance or doubt. Father's faith in us felt like a shield, strong enough to protect the fragile parts of me, strong enough to rebuild what fear had broken. strong enough to make hope breathe again. I sat beneath the shade of an old tree, letting the leaves whisper above me, letting the wind paint its cool fingers across the warmth of my face. She is yours, I whispered to myself. Not in ownership, not in pride, but in the sacred way two souls claim each other, without needing words or promises. I closed my eyes and saw her smile. The smile that had lifted me. On the darkest days of my life, the smile that felt like home. And suddenly I knew. Father was right. He didn't speak from hope. He spoke from knowing. He saw the truth in my silence. In the way I breathed her name. In the way her presence had woven itself through every corner of my heart. She was only mine. Not because the world said so. Not because fate demanded it. But because love had chosen us, long before we understood its meaning. And in that quiet moment, under the fading colors of evening, I felt my heart settle into the certainty of his words. Night slowly wrapped itself around the garden, drawing a quiet curtain over the world, softening every edge, every sound, until only the truth in my heart remained. The stars began to gather above me, filling the sky like scattered promises, each one shining with the kind of calm that only distance and eternity can hold. I looked up at them, wondering if she, somewhere far away, was also gazing at the same silent lights, feeling the same pull I felt. Love has a way of connecting hearts. Across nights, across oceans, across fears. It travels in whispers the wind understands. In sighs the sky has always known. And I felt, deep within me, that she was thinking of me. Maybe quietly, maybe hesitantly, but truthfully the way real love always speaks. Father's voice from earlier returned again, warm and unwavering. She's only yours, no one else's. And each time I replayed it, a new layer of certainty grew within me. I remembered the way she once leaned on my shoulder, not because she was weak, but because she trusted me with the parts of herself she hid from the world. I remembered the way her eyes softened. When she looked at me too long, how she blinked quickly as if afraid that I might see everything she felt. Her love was never loud, never dramatic or demanding. It was gentle like the moon's glow, present even when hidden, steady even when quiet. And Father saw that. Perhaps he saw what neither of us had admitted yet, that her soul had already chosen mine. I stood from beneath the tree and walked toward the veranda, passing the wooden railing that creaked like memories beneath my hand. The night was cool, but something warm moved within me, a soft stirring, a peaceful certainty that love once rooted never leaves. She is only yours. The words played again in my mind, like a lullaby meant for the heart, a comfort that wrapped itself around my doubts. I imagined her standing beside me, her hand slipping quietly into mine, her head resting near my shoulder, her breath brushing against the night. I imagined her smile, that soft, breathtaking curve, that carried both innocence and depth, both hope and hidden tenderness. Sometimes I wondered if she ever felt afraid of losing me, if her heart trembled the way mine did, whenever distance whispered uncertainty. But love is never one-sided, and Father would not have spoken with such calm if he hadn't seen the truth reflected in both our hearts. I leaned against the railing, letting the moonlight settle across my skin, letting the quiet night listen to the unspoken words inside me. I whispered her name into the darkness, and the moment it left my lips, it felt as though the night itself held it gently like something sacred. She is only yours. And as the words echoed again, a peaceful certainty washed over me, as if fate itself nodded in agreement. The night felt softer, the air felt lighter, and my heart, once heavy with doubt, felt ready to breathe again. For love, real love, does not disappear, does not break, does not drift away without returning. It stays, it chooses, it remembers. And she was the kind of love that always finds its way back. I stayed on the veranda for a long while, letting the quiet of the night mend the broken corners of my thoughts, letting the softness of darkness wrap itself gently around my heart. Some nights comfort comes from silence, not from answers, not from explanations, but from the way the world slows down and allows the heart to breathe again. Tonight was one of those nights. I closed my eyes and felt the stillness, felt how the world seemed to pause, just so I could hear the truth growing steadily inside me. Father's words had planted something new, a faith I didn't know I needed, a courage I didn't realize I had lost, a hope that rose like dawn. After a long, sleepless night, "She is only yours," he had said with such certainty, as though he was speaking from a place beyond fear, beyond hesitation, beyond doubt. It made me think about her more deeply, about the small things she did that revealed her heart, even when she stayed silent. The way she listened carefully, even to the things I didn't say, the way her eyes softened whenever I looked away, as though she allowed herself to love me only when I couldn't see, the way she laughed, not loudly, not wildly, but with a softness that wrapped around my soul, like warm hands on a cold night, the way she stood close, close enough for me to feel her presence, close enough for me to sense all the unsaid words trembling inside her. Love speaks in quiet gestures, more than it ever speaks in grand ones, and she spoke 1,000 promises, without saying a single word. I walked back inside the house, the air carrying the faint scent of old wooden walls and memories, and I felt Father's presence, even before I saw him. He was seated in his favorite chair, calm, wise, watching me, the way only a father can, with love, with understanding, with the ability to see what I could not yet admit. "You're thinking of her," he said, not as a question, but as a truth he had known long before I nodded. His voice held no judgment, only warmth, only a gentle reassurance that some loves are too deep to ever be shaken. I sat beside him, and the house felt smaller, cozy, almost sacred, as though it was holding our conversation, like a precious memory. "Do you know why I said she is only yours?" Father asked softly. I looked at him, waiting, my heart beating a little faster. "Because I saw it in her eyes," he said. "I saw the way she looks at you when she thinks no one is watching. I saw the way she carries your name inside her silence." His words sank into me, deep, deeper, until they reached the part of me that had forgotten how to hope. "She belongs to you," he continued. "Not by force, not by claim, but by destiny. The kind that chooses without asking permission." My breath shook a little, not from fear, but from the overwhelming gentleness of being understood. "She is only yours," he repeated. "And love like that does not lose its way." I lowered my gaze, feeling the weight of emotion rise in my chest, feeling the truth settle into every corner of me, like a warm light breaking through shadows. Father placed a hand on my shoulder again. Steady, strong, a touch filled with decades of wisdom. "Go to her when the time is right," he said. "And when you do, you'll see that she has been waiting, just as long as you have." His words wrapped around me, like a promise written by time itself, and for the first time in a long while, I felt my heart stand tall again. Ready to believe, ready to love, ready to claim what destiny had quietly woven into my soul. The night deepened, but instead of darkness filling me, a strange new light began to rise inside, a quiet, steady glow, born from Father's words and the memory of her gentle smile. I walked to my room, each step softer than the last, as though the house itself understood the shift in my heart. The moonlight slipped through the window, laying silver across the floorboards, painting calm across everything it touched, including me. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped together, breathing slowly, letting every memory of her flow through me like a river. Returning to its source, I remembered the first time she trusted me, with her story, her fears, her dreams, the shadows she hid behind her laughter. She had looked at me with eyes that trembled and glowed at once, as though she were offering me a fragile bird cupped in her hands. And I had taken that story gently, protecting it, carrying it, not realizing then that she was also giving me a part of herself. Father must have seen that too. He always noticed things. Before I did, things hidden beneath silence, things whispered in glances, things tucked softly in the corners of two hearts. "She is only yours." His voice repeated in my mind, growing softer, yet somehow stronger each time it echoed. I leaned back and closed my eyes, and suddenly she was there. Not physically, but in the way memories feel alive, when the heart calls them forward. Her smile lit up the darkness behind my eyelids. Her laughter played like gentle waves. Her presence unfolded, like a quiet sunrise over tired land. And I knew, in the deepest, truest part of me, that love like ours could never be replaced, never be replicated, never be claimed by anyone else. Perhaps that was what Father meant. Perhaps he saw in us a bond that fate itself had tied long before we knew it existed. I rose from the bed and walked toward the window, resting my palms against the cool glass, gazing out into the moonlit night. The world looked peaceful, as though the universe was whispering the same message Father had spoken. I imagined her again, alone in her room, tucked beneath her blanket, her hair falling across her pillow, her eyes reflecting the moon, with the same softness I adored. Was she thinking of me? Was my name walking through her mind, the way hers walked tirelessly through mine? I hope so. No, I believe so. Because love like ours does not fade, does not wander, does not forget. It stays, even in silence. It waits, even in distance. It endures, even in uncertainty. Father's words had become a bridge between us, reconnecting the parts of me that fear had tried to separate. I placed my forehead against the window, letting the cool glass press softly against the warmth of my skin, letting the night hold me in its quiet, everlasting arms. Some loves are gentle storms, soft rain, steady winds, winds that guide rather than destroy. She was that kind of storm. She shook me, changed me, but never broke me. And now, standing in this moonlit silence, I felt a truth blooming inside, a truth I could no longer deny. She was mine, not because I wanted her to be, but because her heart had already chosen mine. Long before either of us noticed, Father was right. He saw what destiny had written, in invisible ink, across the pages of our lives. She is only yours, no one else's. The words settled over me like a soft blanket, warm and reassuring, inviting my heart to rest at last. I whispered her name into the quiet night, and even the air seemed to listen, as though it, too, knew she belonged to me, in the purest, most gentle way. And for the first time in many nights, I slept with a peaceful heart, knowing that love, real love, always finds its way home. Morning arrived softly, with the gentle gold of dawn, touching the corners of my room, like a blessing whispered by the sun. I awoke with a calm heart, the kind of peace that only comes after a night spent resting in truth instead of fear. Father's words were still with me, clear, unwavering, warm, a guiding flame that refused to flicker. She is only yours, his voice echoed. As I rose from the bed and pulled open the curtains, light spilled into the room, like hope returning to its throne, like a soft promise made by the sky itself. I walked to the mirror and looked at my reflection. But this time, I didn't see uncertainty. I saw someone who was ready to love, without hesitation, without fear, without doubt. I saw someone who finally understood that destiny is not something you chase. It is something that rises to meet you when your heart becomes quiet enough to hear its footsteps. I splashed water on my face, letting the coolness awaken me, letting it wash away the last traces of worry clinging to my skin. Then I made my way downstairs, where Father sat again, in the same chair as last night, sipping warm tea with the serenity of a man whose heart carried decades of wisdom. He looked up and smiled knowingly, a soft, gentle smile that held no pressure, only understanding. "You slept well?" he observed, and I nodded, because there was no need to explain further. He already knew. Fathers always know. I sat beside him once more, feeling the comfort of his presence, feeling the steady peace that lingered in the early morning air. For a while, we said nothing, just breathed, just existed, just shared the quiet of a new beginning. Then, after a long moment, Father spoke again, his voice low and thoughtful, like a prayer carried by the wind. "When love is real," he said, "it doesn't vanish. Even when people try to deny it, even when fear tries to hide it, even when distance tries to test it." He set his cup down gently, the sound soft, but full of meaning. "Love finds its way," he continued, It always has. It always will. I listened carefully, every word sinking deeper than the last, every truth settling, where old doubts once lived. She cares for you, he added quietly. You may not always see it, but she does. My heart shifted. A small, fragile movement, like a bird testing its wings after being afraid to fly. I thought about her again, about the softness in her gestures, the tenderness in her silence, the way her emotions lit up her eyes, even when her lips tried to hide them. And I realized Father was right. Her love was there, hidden, quiet, as delicate as a secret, but real, more real than anything I had ever known. I leaned back in my chair, letting his words fill me, the way sunlight fills the horizon at dawn. There was no need to rush, to fear, to force anything. Love, when true, moves in its own time, in its own rhythm, with its own quiet certainty. Father placed a hand on his chest and said, "You will know when the moment comes. Your heart will tell you. Her heart will answer." It was then I felt something shift inside me. A gentle, almost sacred nudge, as if destiny itself whispered through his voice. I breathed deeply, feeling hope stretch its wings, feeling love settle more deeply into the chambers of my heart. She is only yours. His words repeated within me, like a soft refrain to a song I had forgotten how to sing. And I knew this journey had only begun, and love was waiting for its next chapter. After breakfast, I stepped outside into the morning light, where the world felt fresh and newly born, as though the earth itself had awakened with a quiet smile. The breeze was gentle, carrying the scent of flowers, still kissed by the night's dew, and something about the air reminded me of her, soft, pure, and full of unspoken emotion. I walked along the garden path again, the same path I had wandered last night, when doubt sat heavy on my chest. But today, everything felt different, lighter, brighter, warmer. The roses seemed to bloom more proudly in the sun. The birds called out with sweeter voices, as though nature itself was celebrating a truth. My heart had finally accepted. She is only yours. The phrase whispered through the leaves, echoed in the breeze, sang with the morning sky. I paused near the old bench, where I had sat with her once, a quiet afternoon, a shared silence, a moment so gentle that it still lived inside me, like a flame that refused to fade. She had sat beside me, hands folded in her lap, her eyes lowered, her breath trembling softly, as though she was holding a secret too heavy to speak. And I had felt her heart calling mine, even though her lips had remained closed. That day, her silence had said more than any words ever could. I sat on the same bench now, running my fingers across the old wooden seat, remembering the warmth her presence once left there. Love leaves traces, invisible but real, quiet but eternal. As I leaned back, the sun warmed my face, and I felt a deep certainty settle inside me, like a bird settling into a nest it trusts. Father's words were no longer just words. They had become a truth I inhaled, a truth I believed, a truth I carried, like a heartbeat. I closed my eyes and let myself imagine her again, not as a memory, but as a future. I imagined her walking through the garden gate, her step soft, her smile shy, her eyes lifting to mine, with the same tenderness that once shook my soul. I imagined her calling my name, her voice warm, her heart full, her presence glowing in the morning light. And the thought alone made my chest tighten with something sweet, something hopeful, something incredibly alive. She is only yours, Father had said. Not because she was bound to me, not because life demanded it, but because love had woven our souls together long before we spoke its name. I opened my eyes and stood slowly, feeling the weight of destiny pressed gently against my shoulders. Not heavy, not demanding, but guiding. I began walking again, this time toward the front gate, as though my heart was pulling me somewhere, calling me forward. into a future waiting. Just beyond the horizon, the road outside the house was quiet and sun-warm, stretching forward like an unwritten story. I wondered if today would bring her closer, if today the universe would whisper her name into my life again. Love has its own timing, its own rhythm, its own silent language. And today, for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to listen to all of it. I breathed deeply, letting the morning fill my lungs, letting hope settle. Where fear once lived, somewhere, she was out there, perhaps walking slowly, perhaps thinking of me, perhaps holding on to a memory that refused to fade. And I knew, with a certainty as soft as sunrise and as strong as Father's wisdom, we were moving toward each other. Even if neither of us had taken the final step yet. Love does that. It pulls, it guides, it unites. And she was the kind of love that life itself protects, that destiny itself honors. She is only yours. The words echoed again, and I smiled, not out of pride, not out of possession, but out of gratitude for a love so deep. It could be felt, even in her absence. I looked at the road again and whispered softly, "I'm coming closer to you." And in the quiet warmth of morning, it felt as though her heart whispered back, "I'm waiting."